Have you ever walked into a room and sensed an invisible wall? Someone's cold glance, a standoffish tone, though you did nothing to deserve it. You were kind, you were respectful, and yet something in the air told you that your presence disturbed them. It's a subtle hostility, hard to name, but easy to feel. Why does this happen? Why do some people seem to resent us, not for what we've done, but simply for who we are, or who we're becoming? The answer, as it often is, lies beneath the surface, deep within the complexities of human emotion and psychology. It's not always your behavior that provokes them, but rather what your presence awakens in their own minds, a silent envy, a buried insecurity, or perhaps a reflection they're not ready to face. As someone who walks the path of Stoic philosophy, I invite you into this exploration, not out of idle curiosity, but for something deeper. If we're to maintain our inner peace and navigate life with clarity and courage, we must understand the silent forces that influence human relationships. That includes recognizing the reasons why your success, your light, your integrity might stir discomfort or even anger in others. In this video, I'll guide you through 9 subtle but powerful truths, reasons that may explain why others secretly harbor resentment toward you. These aren't mere theories. They are patterns rooted in timeless Stoic wisdom and the unchanging nature of human behavior. But before we begin, allow me to say thank you. Your support, your thoughtful messages, and your willingness to walk this philosophical journey together, it means more than you know. And if this is your first time here, I invite you to subscribe and turn on notifications so that more like-minded souls can discover this content. Now, with a clear mind and a steady heart, let's begin. Let's uncover the hidden reasons behind silent hostility and learn how to meet them not with bitterness, but with wisdom. 1. The lack of recognition. There is a quiet ache that lives in many hearts, rarely spoken, often denied. It is the yearning to be seen, not praised with fanfare, not placed on pedestals, but simply acknowledged. For the effort no one noticed, for the kindness no one thanked, the resilience that held everything together in silence. Recognition is not vanity. At its core, it is a human longing to know that your presence matters, that your contributions leave a trace, that your life is not invisible to the people who share it. And when that recognition is withheld, whether by forgetfulness, pride, or neglect, it doesn't just go unnoticed, it hurts. You may have worked tirelessly in the background, supported others without asking, showed up when no one else did, but instead of gratitude you were met with silence, or worse, with someone else taking credit for your light. Over time, that absence of acknowledgement can ferment into resentment, especially when you see others celebrated for far less. Especially when your sacrifices are treated as expectations. But here's where Stoic wisdom offers an unexpected kind of strength. Epictetus reminds us, "Seek not the praise of others, but the approval of your own soul." In a world obsessed with applause, the Stoic seeks alignment. The applause fades, the inner voice remains. This doesn't mean we become numb to neglect. It means we stop outsourcing our self-worth to those who cannot or will not see us clearly. Recognition is beautiful, but it is a bonus, not a foundation. The deeper work is this: learning to recognize yourself, to witness your own efforts and honor them, to look at your own reflection and feel respect, even when the world is silent. Because often, the people who fail to recognize you are the very ones still trapped in their own need to be recognized. Their blindness is not a reflection of your absence, but of their distraction. And, ironically, the more quietly you carry your strength, the more others assume it costs you nothing. But you know You remember the days you kept going with no map, no praise and no hand to hold, and still you moved forward. That matters. So let your recognition come from something higher. Let it come from the integrity with which you live, from the truth you refuse to abandon, from the quiet pride that no one can give you and no one can take away. And if you must walk unthanked, walk anyway. If your name is never mentioned, let your impact speak. If no one sees you, you see you. Because at the end of it all, the deepest peace comes not from being recognized by the world, but from knowing you never needed to be. 2. Competition or rivalry. There is a fine line between striving to be your best and needing to be better than someone else. One uplifts, the other corrodes. In its healthiest form, competition sharpens the mind, awakens discipline and fuels growth. It can inspire us to reach higher, dig deeper, become more than we were yesterday. But when competition becomes obsession, when it shifts from improving self to defeating others, it mutates into something far more toxic: rivalry. Rivalry is not about excellence, it's about dominance. And beneath that need to win at all costs lies a quiet desperation, the belief that self-worth is measured externally, by comparison, by applause, by the fall of others. In this distorted mindset, your achievements become threats, your progress an insult, your joy a disruption to someone else's fragile ego. And so they compare, not to learn but to compete, not to grow but to guard. They watch your every step, not with admiration but with a desire to overtake. And if they cannot match your ascent, they may try to slow it. If they cannot rise, they may attempt to pull you down. This is the shadow side of human ambition, a need not just to succeed, but to succeed over someone else. The Stoics knew this well. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." But for many, you become the impediment, because your success reveals what they have not done, and instead of using that as fuel to evolve, they transform it into resentment. Here's the truth. You may be in competition with no one, but others will still place you in a race you never signed up for. They will measure your steps against theirs. They will resent you for crossing a finish line they themselves refuse to approach. And in their minds, your victory becomes their failure. But their scoreboard is not yours. Stoicism teaches us to measure life not by the metrics of others, but by the alignment of our actions with virtue, purpose, and truth. The only worthy rival is your past self. The only true race is the one toward inner excellence. Still, you will be envied. You will be misunderstood. Some may cheer your climb until you reach higher than they expected, then grow cold, distant, even bitter. That is not your fault. That is their unexamined relationship with their own potential. And if you bend to that resentment, if you shrink yourself to avoid standing out, you are not being humble. You are being afraid. Let others turn competition into rivalry, you turn it into clarity. Recognize the signs. When someone begins to belittle your work, undermine your voice, or celebrate your setbacks, it's rarely about you. It's about the war they're waging with themselves, where your presence has become the symbol of what they have not yet resolved. Respond not with defensiveness, but with detachment, not coldness, but wisdom. Be unbothered, be focused, be generous, with your efforts, not your energy. And if you find yourself slipping into rivalry, pause, reflect, ask, am I driven by purpose or by comparison? Because true greatness is not loud. It doesn't seek applause. It doesn't fear someone else's progress. It simply continues, steady, unshaken, inwardly free. So let them compete, let them compare, You walk your path, quietly, powerfully, without looking sideways. 3. Differences in fundamental values and beliefs. We live in a world that celebrates diversity on the surface, but quietly struggles with it in practice. Every person you meet walks through life carrying a mosaic of experiences, upbringing, culture, pain, victories, and memories. Together, these form their value system, the invisible compass by which they judge the world, define right, wrong, worthy, or strange. And here lies the quiet friction. The moment your compass points in a different direction than theirs, something in them tenses up. It's not always visible. It may come in the form of subtle resistance, polite dismissal, or an inexplicable coldness. But make no mistake, it is there. Because when someone holds their beliefs not as preferences, but as absolute truths, your difference becomes in their eyes a threat, not by intention, but by implication. To live differently is, in some minds, to challenge them. To think differently is, to some, an accusation. To simply be different, peacefully, authentically, is sometimes enough to awaken their defensiveness. This is where Stoic wisdom shines. The Stoics never insisted on conformity. They emphasized harmony, but not through sameness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane." In other words, do not betray your reason just to fit in. Still, this path comes with its cost. You will encounter those who mistake your independence for rebellion, your silence for judgment, your refusal to follow for arrogance. They don't always dislike you. They dislike the mirror you unintentionally hold up, showing them that another way exists. And what do people fear more than change? The suggestion that they may need to re-examine their worldview. Let's be clear, differing values are not inherently a problem. The problem arises when we stop being curious, when we no longer listen, when we confuse disagreement with disrespect, or assume that different means wrong. If someone values stability and you choose risk, they may resent your courage. If someone values tradition and you choose reinvention, they may see your path as betrayal. If someone builds their worth on approval and you find peace in solitude, your calm becomes a quiet confrontation. But remember, it is not your duty to convince them, nor to apologize for your clarity. Your responsibility is to stay rooted in truth, not just your own, but in the deeper truth that all humans are shaped by causes they did not choose: childhood, culture, fear, hope, loss. In this understanding, compassion is born. You stop trying to win arguments and start cultivating peace. You release the need to be understood by everyone and embrace the freedom of simply being. You learn to love without agreement and walk away without resentment. Not everyone will share your values, and that's not a flaw in you or in them. It is the natural outcome of a world where every soul is a different unfolding story. What matters is not sameness, but sincerity, not perfect alignment, but peaceful coexistence. So when you feel the sting of rejection because of what you believe or how you live, remember, it is not your light that offends, it is their unpreparedness to see it. Stand firm, stay soft, speak your truth and let others walk theirs, and if your paths never cross in harmony, wish them well, and keep walking. 4. Misunderstandings and ineffective communication. Sometimes the distance between two people isn't measured in miles, but in misheard words, unread expressions, and A single phrase, uttered without malice, can be misinterpreted as arrogance. A neutral expression might be seen as coldness, a delayed response, misread as rejection. Slowly, these tiny fractures widen, and without realizing it, resentment takes root, not from what was meant, but from what was perceived. In the eyes of the Stoic, perception is everything, and it is rarely objective. Epictetus reminds us that it is not events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Miscommunication, then, becomes fertile ground for judgment to run wild and for emotion to take over reason. When we speak without clarity or when we listen without presence, we allow misunderstanding to creep in like a silent fog. We assume, we react, and so do others. Before long, an innocent interaction transforms into quiet tension, or worse, unspoken contempt. But here's the danger. People don't just mishear your words, they construct entire narratives from them, stories built on half-truths and incomplete understanding, and those stories become walls, separating you from others and clouding their ability to see who you truly are. The Stoic response is not to obsess over what others think of you, but it is to take responsibility for how you express yourself and how you listen. Speak with clarity, listen with humility, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Offer others the benefit of the doubt. Give space for clarification, not condemnation. And when you're misunderstood, which will happen, do not allow your peace to be shaken. Instead, let it be an opportunity to realign with truth, to reinforce your character, and to practice compassion. Because when we replace judgment with curiosity and reaction with reflection, we begin to repair the invisible fractures that separate us. Misunderstandings are not always avoidable, but with awareness and intention, they don't have to become permanent. 5. The influence of rumors and gossip. There is a peculiar kind of pain that comes not from what you've done, but from what others say you've done. A distortion, a whisper, a story told in your absence, repeated in darker corners, gaining color and shape until even strangers think they know who you are. This is the silent violence of gossip. Unlike open conflict, gossip doesn't confront you. It surrounds you. It creeps in behind your back, shaping opinions before you get the chance to speak. A false tone here, a twisted detail there, and suddenly you are cast as a character in someone else's narrative, written by people who do not know your truth, nor care to ask. It is one of the cruelest forms of judgment, when someone chooses to believe a second-hand story over your lived reality. And yet this is nothing new. The Stoics knew well the instability of reputation. As Epictetus warned, if you are ever tempted to look for outside approval, realize that you have compromised your own integrity. If you need a witness, be your own. Reputation, as valuable as it may seem, is not who you are. It is merely an echo, something built from others' perceptions, emotions, and projections. Sometimes it aligns with your character, other times it drifts far from it, and when rumors are at play, that drift can become an abyss. But why do people gossip in the first place? The answer often lies in insecurity and powerlessness. Gossip gives a false sense of control in a world where people feel unseen or unheard. When someone envies your peace, your confidence, your growth, they may not attack you directly, but they can chip away at you quietly, through implication and innuendo. Gossip also thrives on collective fear. It invites people to bond over a shared suspicion, to feel included in the circle of those who know. It feeds on drama, not truth, on perception, not principle, and worst of all, it multiplies rapidly, especially when it confirms what someone already wants to believe. In this way, gossip becomes a tool, not of truth, but of projection. It reveals far more about the one who spreads it than the one it's aimed at. So what should the Stoic do? You do not chase every rumor. You do not beg to be understood. Instead, you live the truth. Over time, your consistency becomes your defense. Your clarity, your calm, your refusal to retaliate. They become a silent testimony, louder than any slander. When someone distorts your image, do not be drawn into the chaos. Maintain your composure, not because you're indifferent, but because your peace is too valuable to be traded for someone else's confusion. Seneca once said, "A good character, when established, is not easily overthrown." Let that be your guide. Be known by your actions. Let your life speak louder than their words. And yes, it will hurt. You are human. Betrayal by rumor wounds more deeply than open insult because it wears the mask of truth. But even so, you must not fall into bitterness. Instead, cultivate pity for those who feel the need to wound in whispers. They are often at war with themselves, and you simply became the battlefield. The wind of gossip may shake the leaves, but it cannot move the roots of a grounded soul. So walk on with dignity, with stillness, with an unshakable center. Let the noise swirl around you if it must, but do not let it enter you. Your name may be spoken in rooms you've never entered, but your character, that sacred thing, lives where gossip cannot reach. 6. Lack of empathy and understanding. In an ideal world, every conversation would be met with open hearts, every disagreement softened by patience, every difference honored with curiosity. But the world we live in often falls short of that ideal, and at the center of many silent conflicts lies one missing element: empathy. Empathy is the quiet bridge that spans the gap between two souls. When it is absent, that gap becomes a chasm, and in that distance misunderstanding festers, fear takes root, judgment grows. It is easy to dislike what we do not understand. It is even easier to resent what we do not try to understand. Empathy is not simply about feeling someone else's pain. It's about perceiving it, respecting it, even when it's foreign to us. It asks us to suspend our assumptions, to slow our conclusions, and to meet the other not as a threat, but as a mirror. But many people today are emotionally overstimulated and under-reflective. They race through interactions with preconceived notions and rigid expectations. In that state, they don't listen, they filter, they don't observe, they judge, and often what they see in you is not you, but an image colored by their biases, fears, or emotional limitations. You may have done nothing wrong. You may have acted with grace. But to someone with hardened lenses, your confidence may appear as arrogance, your silence as superiority, your boundaries as rejection. And when someone lacks the inner capacity to pause and wonder, what is this person truly experiencing? They react, often harshly. Their inability to see your perspective becomes hostility. Their lack of understanding becomes resentment. The Stoics would not be surprised by this. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question: what fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I am about to criticize? Empathy begins not in others, but within ourselves. The inability to extend it outward is often a reflection of a hardened or neglected inner world. But what do we do when we're on the receiving end of that absence? We don't beg to be understood. We don't bend ourselves into forms others can tolerate. Instead, we observe. We recognize that not everyone is ready or willing to meet us in truth. And we don't take it personally. Because someone's failure to understand you is not an indictment of your worth, it is a limit of their perception. That said, empathy should never be confused with permission. You are not obligated to stay in environments where your humanity is not respected, or where people consistently choose judgment over curiosity. The Stoic teaches us to respond, not react, but also to retreat when necessary, to protect our peace. And yet, do not allow the harshness of others to harden your heart. Let their lack of empathy remind you why it is so essential. Let it deepen your own commitment to seeing the world not just through your own lens, but through the eyes of others. When someone lashes out in misunderstanding, ask quietly, What must they be carrying that prevents them from seeing clearly? Not to excuse them, but to remain unshaken by them. Because the unempathetic often suffer more than they show. Their world is small, brittle, easily threatened. Yours doesn't have to be. So keep your heart open, even if theirs is closed, and protect your inner stillness, not with walls, but with wisdom. Let others choose judgment. You choose perspective. Let others stay shallow. You go deep. And if someone cannot meet you in that depth, bless them silently and move on. 7. Personal insecurities and projection. Not all battles are visible. Some are fought in silence, behind composed faces and polite conversations, battles not with others, but within the self. And when those battles remain unresolved, they often spill outward, not with clarity but through shadows, through subtle judgments, cold stares, passive hostility, or even outright rejection. The cause? Personal insecurities, quietly projected onto others. To understand this is to unlock a profound truth about human behavior, that much of the resentment we receive has nothing to do with us at all. Imagine a person who feels perpetually inadequate in their career. They work hard, yet never feel enough. Now you walk into the room, confident, focused, grounded. Your presence, though unintended, becomes a trigger, not because you harmed them, but because you unintentionally reminded them of everything they fear they are not. This is projection, when someone attributes their own self-doubt, fear, or dissatisfaction onto another person, often the one who seems to possess what they lack. You might be resented not because you've done anything wrong, but because you represent a possibility they've denied in themselves. You might be disliked not because of your flaws, but because of your wholeness. You might be targeted not because you wounded them, but because your light exposed their wounds. The Stoics understood this mechanism well. Seneca observed, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. Insecurity gives rise to imagination, and in that imagination others become the enemy." But as a Stoic, your role is not to retaliate or internalize these projections. It is to recognize them for what they are, reflections of another's struggle, not your failure. This awareness breeds compassion, not weakness, but strength. Because when you realize that someone's hostility is actually a cry from their inner chaos, you stop absorbing the poison, you start seeing clearly. It also allows you to let go of guilt. You are not responsible for the emotional labor others refuse to do. You cannot fix someone's self-worth by dimming your brilliance. And you cannot live your life walking on eggshells just to avoid triggering someone else's fragile identity. But you can remain kind without being submissive. You can hold compassion without becoming a sponge for their negativity. You can stay generous without making yourself small. Let them project if they must. Let them distort your image if they must. Let them assume, misread, or dislike if they must. None of it belongs to you. Your duty is to stay anchored in the truth of who you are. Your responsibility is to continue growing, not despite their insecurities, but precisely because the world needs more people who transcend them. And when you feel the sting of being misunderstood or resented for simply existing as you are, remind yourself, it is not the action itself that harms, but the judgment we place upon it. Epictetus. Their judgment is theirs. Your peace is yours. Keep them separate. In the end, the only person truly qualified to measure your worth is you. 8. The influence of social expectations. From the moment we take our first breath, the world begins whispering in our ears. This is who you should be. This is how you must live. This is what success, love, and purpose should look like. And most obey, not out of weakness but out of habit, because the weight of tradition, culture, and family expectations is subtle, yet immense. It doesn't need to shout, it only needs to repeat. But one day, perhaps quietly, you decide to take a different path. Maybe you leave a stable job to follow a calling. Maybe you choose solitude over the expected relationship. Maybe you reject the rat race, the noise, the performance, and instead seek something quieter, more honest, more aligned. And suddenly, you are no longer just you. You become a disruption. To live authentically in a world of conformity is to invite discomfort, not just for yourself, but for those who remain within the script. Because your freedom challenges their fear, your choices disturb their certainties, your peace highlights their discontent. That's when the judgments begin, not because you are wrong, but because you no longer validate the structure they've built their identities upon. Stoic philosophy speaks directly to this tension. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it. And it is in your power to wipe out that judgment now." People often judge those who deviate, not because they truly understand your choices, but because they fear what your deviation suggests, that the world might be larger, more complex, and more uncertain than they were prepared to accept. So when you live outside expectations, understand this. Their discomfort is not your rebellion, it is their resistance to awakening. Social expectations are like invisible fences. They don't bind the body, they bind the imagination. And when you step beyond them, those still inside may resent your courage, because deep down, they've longed to do the same. But do not return to the cage out of guilt. Do not play small to soothe another's inability to expand. You owe no one an explanation for living your truth. Your life is not a public consensus. It is not a democracy. It is a sacred and personal unfolding. That said, walking this path requires strength. There will be moments of loneliness. There will be misunderstandings, accusations, even rejection. But what you gain in return is far greater. Inner congruence. The rare peace that comes from no longer betraying yourself for approval. Seneca wrote, "What progress, you ask, have I made? I have begun to be a friend to myself." That is the gift of choosing authenticity over acceptance. You become your own ally, your own compass, your own quiet sanctuary. And those who truly love you, not for how well you fit their mold, but for who you are when you break free of it, will remain. Or they will find you later, on the same path, in their own time. So live not to impress, but to express. Not to conform, but to align. Not to satisfy the world's noisy demands, but to meet the quiet calling within. Let others follow the crowd. You follow your clarity. Let them serve tradition. You serve truth. Let them resent your difference. You honor it. Because the day you start living on your own terms is the day the world begins to call you dangerous. Wear that with pride. 9. Envy and jealousy. Among all the forces that quietly erode human relationships, envy and jealousy are perhaps the most corrosive and the most misunderstood. When someone envies you, they do not simply wish to have what you have, they wish you didn't have it. Your success, your growth, your peace. They become painful mirrors, reflecting back to them the parts of their own lives they feel are lacking, and instead of being inspired, they become bitter. Jealousy turns admiration sour. What once may have been respect can quickly curdle into quiet resentment. And it's rarely about the thing itself, your job title, your relationship, your talents. It's about what it represents, a perceived reminder of their own stagnation, their own unfulfilled dreams. Stoic philosophy teaches us not to take this personally. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, don't worry about things outside your control. And truly, the envy of another is never within your power to manage. It is born of their inner turmoil, not your actions. Still, the effects can be real. Envy has a way of hiding behind polite smiles and small talk. It can drive people to whisper behind your back, question your intentions, diminish your accomplishments, or even hope, silently, that you stumble. But here's the Stoic truth. None of that belongs to you. Their envy is theirs to carry. Your responsibility lies in how you respond. Do not shrink yourself to make others more comfortable. Do not apologize for the progress you've earned. Instead, remain grounded in your own integrity. Keep building, keep walking your path. Because envy is not just a reflection of someone's discontent, it's a signal that you're growing, evolving, becoming. And sometimes the mere act of becoming more than you were yesterday is enough to awaken resistance in those who are standing still. Let their envy be a silent testimony, not to your arrogance, but to your ascent. You've walked with me through the quiet truths that so many feel, yet few dare to speak. Why success invites resentment. Why your light becomes uncomfortable to some. Why being fully yourself often feels like an act of rebellion in a world that rewards conformity. But now, let me tell you something essential, something the Stoics knew and lived by. You are not responsible for the shadows others project onto your light. Their envy is not your fault. Their silence is not your failure. Their judgment is not your burden. You are not here to please everyone, to soften your edges or to shrink your truth, just to remain palatable to those who haven't yet faced their own. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. So when faced with bitterness, choose kindness. When misunderstood, remain steady. When unseen, keep showing up for yourself, because your worth does not fluctuate based on who recognizes it. It remains intact, unwavering, and whole, rooted in your character, your discipline, your resilience. Yes, the world will test you. You will be misread, misjudged, and perhaps even hated, not for your flaws, but for your strength. But that is not your cue to withdraw. It is your call to rise. To live with clarity, intention, and a heart that chooses peace, even when surrounded by noise. To walk away from what diminishes you and toward what expands you. To build a life so rooted in truth that no rumor, rivalry, or rejection can shake it. So continue on your path, not with arrogance, but with quiet confidence. Not seeking approval, but living in alignment. Not waiting to be invited, but giving yourself permission to fully exist. You do not need to explain your light to those committed to misunderstanding it. Let your life speak. Let your presence teach. Let your example endure. And finally, cherish those who do see you. The ones who celebrate your growth, respect your boundaries, and love you not in spite of your truth, but because of it. Those are your people. Let the rest fall away.